Hello, hello. I want to welcome all of you out there to another hour of mystery and truth and things that you are hard pressed to find anywhere else except here on the Universal Consciousness Show. My name is Aage and I'm one of the hosts, and I'm here in the southwest of the United States, and my co-host Diana is over in Germany. Are you there, Diana?
I'm here. Hello, everyone.
Hi, there we are. And for those of you that want to listen to this show afterwards, you can go to YouTube, and under Universal Consciousness Show, you will find it there. And you will find it just about everywhere on the social media. And I also archive it on the website www.universal-consciousness-show.com. And also we have, for people that want to, let's say you have a friend that doesn't have access to the computer right now, but he's got a telephone, just call him up and say, hey, dial 701-719-9704, and he can listen live to this show right now. And I'm going to repeat that number. That was a good one. So 701-719-9704. And of course, you should have a pen and a little piece of paper here, because there are things that you just might want to write down. We have been known to do that. So we'll give you some things here to ponder on as we go along. And yeah, Diana, and you had something here, so go ahead.
So, hello, Laura. Thank you so much for being here today. Could you please start with a squeezed story about yourself, and how did you end up doing what are you doing?
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's really great to be here. It just felt like I really didn't have much of a choice. So it wasn't like I had like a plan in my conscious mind. It was more, I was just allowing myself to show up in whatever way felt most necessary. Just being born into the Eisenhower family and feeling a deeper soul history connected to, you know, being prepared for what this ascension window period means. You know, kind of weaving the two together to understand what was going on during his administration, you know, what was going on during the Second World War, and what are the ancient roots and galactic history connected to all of it, and like the deeper soul journey that I felt really aware of. I was just processing it and just finding opportunities to express, you know, what sort of conclusions I came, you know, up with along the way. So it's sort of a merging of a deeper soul journey, and just what being born into this family and all this sort of different things that I uncovered, and how that kind of melds together. And I would say that this all started from the time I was a child, actually.
Wow. Yeah. Some people would actually envy you from being growing up in a family like that. But then again, it felt pretty normal, didn't it?
Yeah, I don't think it's really anything to envy. But at the same time, you know, I think we all sort of find ourselves looking from the outside into a lot of different situations. And I mean, I definitely feel really grateful to have been born into this family, because it helped me to, you know, come to terms with a lot of different things that need, you know, it helped me to, you know, feel a greater maybe passion or drive to uncover what I've uncovered. And it's a family of love. It's not an Illuminati typical presidential bloodline, because those kind I wouldn't envy, because, you know, when you're talking Illuminati and dark rituals, or, you know, some sort of manipulation or infiltration, that's definitely a scary sort of thing. So I feel grateful that it was a loving family, and it's just interesting that it just happens to be sort of a high profile situation, but it helped me to be able to bring in a larger mission related to the planetary body and what it means, and what disclosure is all about, because during his presidency, he had more contact than anybody else and knew a few things that we're getting to know now.
Mm. Yeah, and getting into that arena and talking about that, I wonder what is going on in the world today. It seems like everybody, at least everybody that is a little bit aware, they are walking around wondering, when is the other shoe going to drop? What is happening? They're waiting for something big to happen, but what do you think it could be that could be coming our way?
Well, I mean, on a deeper level in our own soul, I think we know that we're shifting into higher earth energies, and we're also being prepped in a lot of ways. There's people talking about the event. There's just, a lot of talk about ascension, but then there's also the intellectual part of us that is sort of waiting for disclosure and more truths to come out. And, the two are definitely connected, but the thing is, there's been a lot of secrecy. So I think there is a part of us that has been very curious and, sort of wondering, what this is all about. And then another part of us that is needing the discernment to be able to separate disinfo from, truth. So I think it's just a process of our own internal work and how we relate to the information that's coming in from outside of ourselves. But there's this anticipation and sort of, we're all being sort of primed to, get ready for, more and more of it. But at the same time, it's already happening. And if we're waiting for it to come from something outside of ourselves, we need to make sure that we are prepared for really being able to, see it for what it is without being further deceived, because that's been the name of the game.
Yeah, and there's so many theories about this event. Some say, oh, the aliens are coming back, and then we have, we're going to have a sun flare. It's going to bake the earth into one little charcoal ball, and you get all kinds of different theories out there. Are there any of them that you think have any, except for what's going on in ourselves? Do you think any other of those theories have any merit to it?
I mean, I think they do, but I don't really go by predictions. I mean, when I look at the astrology and with all the research that I've done into this particular window period, I know that, something's happening, but I think the way we all experience it is going to be somewhat different. I think it's always good to be prepared. I mean, that's why we get on airplanes and we get the rundown every time about, what happens if we crash. Here's the oxygen masks, and here's, where to find your floaty under the seat. So I think, there's often a necessity for preparation, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to happen. But I think if we're not prepared, we might be, completely blindsided. So I think all those things are possibilities, but we just should look at it like possibilities and not, a fixed reality, because the thing is, we're creative beings and we're always, in a flow of co-creativity with the elements and the divine, plan, and also the randomness of just free will in this human experience. And I just think, we need to be in the now and very grounded and intent with our creative energy. What do we want to see? And but at the same time, be well prepared. But we have to remember that we're also creative beings that play a part in what is going to, take place in front of us. There's some things that are going to be beyond our control, yes, but like anything, when it shows up, we have a choice as far as how we perceive it and how we choose to work with it. But I think, preparation is important. I mean, it's obvious there's been breeding programs. It's very clear that, extraterrestrials are going to want to integrate into our society, but, it's important that we just see them as a part of us. But I'm much more into direct connect with spirit. I'm not so much like an advocate for, ETs integrating, because I guess maybe I have issues, so I'm very discerning about it, but I'm certainly not negating of it either. I want to be prepared, because I'm here to, most of my my awareness of my mission is to help us to preserve our sovereignty, to be sovereign, and to recognize what we're truly made of, and to be very careful of any form of manipulation.
Yeah, and that is so important to think of. And most people don't. They're too busy with their work and going, 9 to 5ing it and so on, coming back and falling on the couch and watching TV at night. But for those of us that look a little bit outside of the box, we see stuff going on out there that we may not understand, but we know something is going to happen. And I think, gosh, all you have to do these days is to go outside in the evening and look up in the sky, and you got half the chance of seeing something weird going on up there. So I think the alien presence has been here for a long time, and it sounds to me, it looks to me like they want to come back.
Yeah, and the thing is, I mean, we used to be far more advanced. We used to be much more embodied in our full DNA strand potential. And, you know, in a lot of ways, we're dealing with our future selves, whether those are digressed aspects or ascended aspects. You know, as far as the ETs are concerned, there isn't really any, you know, time in a linear sense in the way that we experience it. And, you know, so when we look at being upgraded and moving into higher earth energies, we want to make sure that we're, you know, being upgraded on our own terms. I mean, we want sort of an organic unfoldment, because a lot of the things that end up wanting to interface with us or integrate with us, either, you know, have a control agenda or it's a part of a greater healing. And as long as we can tell the difference, we can keep ourselves somewhat protected. But at the same time, it's like we hold these genetics. They're not really alien. They're aspects of ourself on some level. But the whole deal is it service to self? Is it service to others? Is it here to control us and modify us further into transhumanism or into more of the sort of machine kind of cyborg techno world? Or is it helping us to be in our avatar consciousness and in a level of mastery that we've been, I mean, that this whole process of ascension is geared towards? There's false ascension, and there's definitely different controller groups related to extraterrestrials that are absolutely a part of that. Mm-hmm. And they can present themselves as being benevolent, but they aren't necessarily.
Yeah, and the thing is that we have quantum science now, they've proven to us that we live in a mind-created universe. And if that's the case, you know, then we create our own existence. And I was careful there not calling it our own life, because what we see around us is not really life. It is an existence. Life is really outside of the physical, where we, it's this almost like a hologram we're walking around in, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah. And the only thing that really can have control over us is if we're unconscious, if we're not fully awakened to our multidimensional energy, or if we're not integrating our light and dark or masculine and feminine, because anytime there's imbalance, it's easy to, you know, be kind of messed with. But at the same time, it pushes us to wake up. So the very things that threaten us are the very things that help us to discover, you know, all that we're made of. If we can, you know, take on the challenge versus getting more and more dumbed down or unconscious or enslaved.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's their favorite thing to do, to mess with us. I remember there was the head of the CIA back when Reagan was president. He said that if we discover that everything the American public knows is false, then we know our disinformation program is complete. Remember that?
Yep, yep.
So they're messing with us every day of the week. But the thing is, like you just said, you know, we are all mind, and we can control our mind because we can actually take it away from them by creating our own reality.
Right. And if we're not willing to, something else is. And so, I mean, it's not really about being a victim to it. It's about recognizing what's at stake. I mean, if we're not going to stand in our power in a responsible way, you know, something else is going to steer the ship. And, or, you know, or else it's a vacant vessel that it just stagnates. So, I mean, this is all a part of this greater experience that we signed up for. Yeah. And ultimately, you know, everything serves in our awakening, no matter how dark or negative it might be. Because the thing is, when people are very blessed and everything goes smoothly, they sometimes take it for granted and they create the polarity, you know, because they can't maintain a sense of gratitude, or, you know, those with power choose to abuse the power, but they don't need to. You know, just like those who might be struggling might see what the priorities are and might recognize the importance of love in a way that maybe somebody who has it in abundance might fail to recognize. So, this is really just an opportunity for our egos to get into alignment with our higher self and to really integrate that into physical reality, because that's ultimately what ascension is. It's an initiation that we go through, and then we see a different world around us because we've gone through some level of transformation, or we've found our wisdom body and we're living in accordance with it, instead of just giving our power away, like you said, just showing up for work and coming home, crashing on the couch and just taking in whatever the TV feeds you.
Yeah, and this in the distant past, that's what I was doing. And you enjoy your work. I guess it's okay. You take the time off in the evening, and I don't see anything wrong in doing that. But we still need to think. And you just said something a little about 20 seconds ago, that this existence that we signed up for, that means to me that before we actually took on this body, we agreed to go through some of the stuff that we are doing, didn't we?
Well, we must have. At the same time, a lot of souls do feel trapped. I mean, we're dealing with a lot of catastrophes in our ancient history. It doesn't mean we asked for it or attracted it necessarily. I mean, every individual has their own story, but a lot is also recovery. Did we really, it's like if we're in an accident, did we really want that accident? But maybe on some level, we agreed to it in order to, put us into a process that we needed to be taken into. But we're dealing with the randomness of free will. And so there's different entities and beings that are going to utilize free will in their own sort of way. And some choose to control and create war and create conflict. And those that just want peace, didn't necessarily sign up for the war, but maybe signed up for the whole experience of what it's like to be in a free will universe. But, we kind of have to accept the extremes that come along with it, because, we're dealing with other people's way of, handling it. So there's a lot about, us being in rehabilitation, and some people, kind of resent that this is what it is. But, it's a part of a greater understanding of regenerative nature and what our real healing abilities are, what we're really made of. I mean, this gives us a real clear idea of wow, okay, we can recover, we can heal, we can transform, we can create alchemy. There is no real doom or gloom. That's just sort of a part of the process, maybe moving through that feeling, but it's certainly not a destination, just like fear or anything else that's negative. It's just a part of the cycle of death and rebirth. But yeah, I mean, we signed up for it, but at the same time, we're also bound to the necessity of what it's going to take to completely rehabilitate and be, knowing what we're sort of dealing with on a galactic sort of multidimensional scale. Because, back when we were vulnerable in these advanced civilizations, that all of a sudden ended up in cataclysms or holocausts. Now we know, okay, we know what the darkness is. We know what the evils are. And I think some of us were in a little bit of denial. Oh, there is no evil, or it's all, and it's an illusion. But now we're at a phase of our creation or our experience as humans where we know a little bit more about what to do with it and how we can elevate ourselves into a different set of circumstances and dynamics.
Yeah, but when you mention alchemy here, are you thinking mental alchemy, or what does that term mean to you? What we're going through right now, this global alchemy.
Well, I mean, it's on a soul level. So, we're made up of earth, air, fire, water, which are the points of the 5-pointed star. But then, okay, there's a fifth element, and that's the ether. That's spirit. That's part of the greater circulation of creation, where we have the elements, earth, air, fire, water, within us and outside of us in nature. But the one thing that we haven't been able to get in touch with is the ether, which allows us to recognize that spirit holds dominion over physical matter. The dark rituals and the, satanic sort of cults and secret societies that exist have been promoting physicality holding dominion, and just, the misuse of power and the enslavement of, the human soul. And so soul alchemy and global alchemy has to do with getting our power back and recognizing that fifth element. And when we do that, we actually correct the reversals, So when we look at the symbolism of the inverse pentagram, that would represent sort of the darker agendas, and how we've been limited in this physical density, and there's been an accumulation of toxicity, and there's been a reversals on these elemental energies that have impacted us. And Venus, the planet Venus, has created a pentagram in the sky. It draws a perfect pentagram in the sky. Its orbit over the course of the last 26,000 years has drawn an actual star in the sky that astronomers and astrologers noticed, which means that the heart energy of humanity and the Mother Earth and creation and the way the planetary bodies are moving are geared towards the correction of these reversals, which fulfills an alchemical process over the course of many, many thousands of years, that whatever's been in reversal, wherever we've been limited or contaminated, has the opportunity to be purified. And it's not just a fluffy philosophy or, gosh, that sounds nice and we can put our beliefs on it. It's actually scientific. It's actually what is going on within the earth grids as well. And when the sun started to move into the 13th sign of Fiacus, which is ruled by the ether, actually the elements fire and water, it's the only zodiac sign that is ruled by the ether. Everything else is, if you're a Libra, you're an air sign. If you're an Aries, you're a fire sign. If you're a Pisces, you're a water sign. But Ophiuchus, the 13th sign, is ruled by the ether, fire and water. So we have the capacity now to completely and totally heal in ways that we haven't been able to before. And it's not just healing, it's an alchemical process.
Yeah. And what you're saying here actually about the raising of the vibration, that kind of leads us into some form of an ascension. We're leaving the third dimension behind, are we?
Yeah, and that's available. I think some people just think, it's just a nice thought or, a religious belief or a new age kind of concept. But, it's been my life's research, and I can safely say that it's a process that is underway within nature and cosmos. It's something that can be tracked as a legitimate and real thing. And the Mayans understood it. They're the ones that, came up with the calendar, the 13 moon calendar, and recognized this particular window period as being, a massive, shift time. But the projection has been, it's the end of the world, or it's apocalyptic, and different dark technologies and, things like weather modification and HARP technologies and chemtrails and all the assaults that the human race is experiencing is to divert the timeline away from what's available.
Boy, it gets complicated, doesn't it?
Yeah. And it's just, it's just basically, at the end of the day, we make a choice. We make a choice in everything. If we get sick, what kind of healthcare are we looking for? Do we want to heal holistically, or do we go to a doctor and go on meds? Maybe in some cases we don't have that much of a choice, but at the end of the day, we would want to take a holistic approach. So when we look at our future, we want to look at it holistically and multidimensionally and see, what's available based on what we start to discover is within ourselves, instead of what's being presented to us through the media, through politics, through religions, through even new age deceptions. We got to really start thinking for ourselves, and then we'll be able to, choose wisely, because there's always going to be a choice in front of us. When we go somewhere and we're around a group of people, we get to decide who we talk to and who we, or if we want to sit alone in the corner, and that one conversation can change everything. But then we want to be discerning. Do we really want to get to know that person? Are they threatening? So every idea and concept that's presented to us, we have a choice. Do we want that to be a part of our creative makeup, or our creative channels, or what we're allowing to manifest through our being as a creative vessel? So, if something presents itself to us and we don't think it looks like a positive future or something that we want, we have to boldly turn ourselves in the direction of, something that really resonates to the frequency of our soul, where our body's in agreement, where we feel an expansion in our heart instead of constriction or, this looks terrible. But at the same time, we want to be prepared. Again, with that metaphor of, why else would we learn what to do if the plane were to crash? But do they crash often? No.
Nope.
But it's still good to be prepared for the worst. But knowing that, the power is really more in our favor than not.
Yeah, and what I'm seeing is that people are waking up in hordes to that there is more to than what you see on TV and what you hear from your minister or people. I haven't seen an awakening like this for forever. So this is accelerating. Is it something that we are creating, or is it also in addition to maybe a region of space that we're moving into, possibly, where there are maybe different energies that is helping us raise the vibration? Or what do you think?
Well, there's a whole concept of the photon belt and what the CMEs are doing, from the sun, the coronal mass ejections. I mean, there's light codes that are streaming in. There's also the mother energy that's anchored in the physical planet. And we can look at it as more of an energy than, an entity, or else, it starts to go into belief systems. But it's a 13 dimensional core that is like a seed, and it's unfolding. And like a plant, it goes through different developmental phases. But that energy has not been able to be grounded into the planet. And up until 2009, it wasn't actually in the planet. And so that energy is being grounded and anchored back into the planet through the Venus transits, through the fact that we're moving through, this photon belt, through the fact that the 13th sign is now activated. We're able to create alchemy. And so there's an acceleration process. And what it does is it can create a lot of physical crises and a lot of crises within the soul, where there's breakdowns and death, rebirth experiences. Maybe there's an acceleration of some level of adversity or some sort of new development that's positive, like the end of a bad relationship and the beginning of something like sacred union. So there's going to be a mass acceleration, but if people aren't on board, it might feel like a misfortune or, a crisis that's not easy to assimilate. But if we can step back and look a little bit deeper, we'll see, where it's trying to, guide us. And we're not taught that from the time that we were children. If there's a crisis, we look at it as misfortune. If we lose a job, we see ourselves as failures. If we lose a relationship, we weren't good enough. And we have all these judgments on these really important initiations. And we got to look at it like, okay, we're being guided into something far better for us. And if we can, jump on board and be flexible enough, we can allow ourselves to be blessed, because blessings aren't for some and not all. There might be some karmic cleanup for some, but just like our bodies, naturally want to create equilibrium and homeostasis, when something out of balance happens, the same thing if, our life gets injured or we get sick. I mean, life and nature naturally has a healing vibration, and it's encoded in nature to want to take us to the next level. But we've been programmed and mind controlled away from that. And we end up getting further divorced from ourselves. And then we get really off track. So, it's an accelerated time. Because of where we are, we're in alignment with the galactic plane. We're in this window period of these ascension cycles, but we have to, make sure that we recognize that we can only get better, and not to misunderstand the things that are trying to elevate us and upgrade us.
Yeah, I totally agree. And when we are thinking about our existence here, we're not alone. The word aliens, that should mean a lot more than just a little gray guy, I think it's we have both maybe physical entities and mental entities and spiritual aliens too.
Yeah, I agree.
So if we look at that, who do we want to associate with? Well, we can probably reach out to the spiritual entities, or at least I would, more so, and draw maybe knowledge and other advantages from that. But I think I have a little idea of what's coming when it comes to the aliens, because they want to come back. They see some stuff happening here that I think many of them do not like. But do you know of any agreements or contracts or treaties that was written between an alien species and, let's say, the US or the Russians or the European governments? Or have there actually been agreements like that, so the aliens are allowed to come in and abduct people and deal with us the way they are doing? Do you know of anything like that?
No, absolutely. Yeah, there's been treaties during the time of actually Franklin Roosevelt. Several species of gray aliens contacted all the major world governments and made secret treaties with many of them. And these treaties were sort of, I mean, the extraterrestrials had no intention of honoring any of the agreements, and the humans ended up getting so sucked into it that it ended up compromising the human race. But this started with in Roosevelt's administration, and it actually as far as the U.S. government's concerned, but it actually, you know, going on for thousands of years. But
Oops.
Hitler and the Nazis were involved with the Nordics, and then the Dracos, and then the Greys, you know, got involved as sort of being kind of the middle group, trying to implement some of these agendas through contacting other, you know, world governments. And, you know, these treaties, you know, basically had to do with abducting, you know, humans for genetic material.
Yeah.
And there's just a lot about the secret space program and, you know, what those intentions were as far as humans are concerned.
Yeah, and I see now that we are at the bottom of the hour here, so we should probably go ahead and take a little commercial break. So when we get back, we will keep talking with Laura Eisenhower, and we will be back in about, I think, 4 to 5 minutes.
There are days that the red pill is bitter in my stomach, but I can't get it back out. I think because I have to. I speak because I have no choice. I walk through this dark age we're in with open eyes.
Let's mute ourselves.
On latenightinthemidlands.com. And together, maybe we won't stumble and fall.
The L&M Radio Network offers a chat room for you, the listener, to connect with others who are interested in the topics and guests that the L&M Radio Network brings to you. During the live shows, the hosts will even visit the chat room and chat with you, the listener. Click on the big red Chat and Listen button at the top of the website and join us. No subscription is needed at either lnmradionetwork.com or latenightinthemidlands.com.
Why subscribe to Late Night in the Midlands, you ask? Well, I'll tell you why. Late Night in the Midlands covers everything, and through the thousands of expert guests who have joined Michael Vera on his show, come pieces of the big puzzle, which started many years ago. Michael and his guests reveal information dating back to the beginning of time. To this very moment, Michael Vera not only brings you the best guests with the best information, but Michael is not afraid to call out those who are less than honest. You see, in this day and age, we need a radio show we can count on and a radio host we can trust to expose the truth one show at a time. So become a late nighter and subscribe now. Talk radio like no other. Late Night in the Midlands, bringing the truth back to talk radio.
Do you need toner for your Epson, Hewlett-Packard, Canon, Brother, Apple, or Sharp printers? Look no further than Laser Technologies. In business for over 20 years, they offer the lowest prices on toner on the web. They can also repair your laser printers and toners fast and easy. Call their expert staff today at 561-792-9600 or email us at service@laser-technologies.com for all your toner needs. All toner is shipped nationwide. Why wait? Get the lowest prices on toner. Call or email us today.
There is a better radio show, beyond that which is known to the people. It is a radio show more informative than others, and as timeless as infinity. It is the equilibrium between light and dark, between the sheeple and the paranormal, and it is heard at the base of man's ignorance and at the summit of his knowledge. This is the radio show of imagination, a show we call The Secret Teachings.
Okay, we are back with the Universal Consciousness Show, and we're talking with Laura Eisenhower. She's a global alchemist and a cosmic mythologist and an intuitive astrologist and an international sought-after speaker. So listen really close, because we got some good things coming up. We were talking about the agreements that was made between alien species and humans. And I imagine there was a reason for this agreement. Maybe the aliens possibly needed us more than we needed them. Maybe they were on the backside of the evolutionary curve. And because of that, then maybe they needed some human DNA. What do you think about that?
That's so funny, because I just wrote that recently. I said, you know, they need us more than we need them. They're trying to correct things on, you know, the timeline, but at the same time, they want to use us to validate their existence, and they want to integrate into, you know, the world, you know, right now to correct the digression that took place. Basically, the treaties involved supplying, you know, the government supplying a number of human adults and children that a government agreed to barter in exchange for abduction, work camps, sexual slavery, forced breeding, genetic experimentation, genetic augmentation, and secret space programs. So when we look at all that, it's not really benefiting us. I mean, forced breeding, sexual slavery, genetic manipulation. I mean, it's a very much serving a service to self mentality. To do, you know, work for them on their behalf, to create, you know, colonies off planet, to, you know, give them or their overlords, you know, something to feed upon, and something, you know, to you know, something to, you know, work on their behalf. And so the Greys are sort of like in the in-between. And I know that if people are hearing this for the first time, it's kind of difficult to wrap your head around. But yeah, I mean, if you Google around it, you're going to see Eisenhower mostly as the president that is brought up in relation to ET and government treaties, but it did not originate with him at all, and it was not, you know, his intention. By the time the treaties, you know, came to his administration, it was a form of surrender, because the treaties had already been in place since the, you know, 1930s. And actually earlier than that, Phil Schneider talks about 1912 as being the starting point of ET government treaties. So but you don't find that information very easily. People more find that Eisenhower was, you know, the president that made the contact and signed some sort of treaty that allowed this, and that's actually not the case. By the time, he was in office, it was a surrender, and you know, and it was right at the end of the Second World War, and you know, the Dracos were already heavily involved with the Nazis, and Project Paperclip brought all these Nazi scientists into America, and so those mind control projects and other, you know, projects, you know, ended up getting integrated into, you know, where, you know, into this country. And that's why we haven't had a real president or, you know, anything real about our government ever since. And so he tried to give us a warning. Eisenhower tried to warn us about this, but he certainly was not in agreement to it. And so there's a lot of disinformation about this. And, you know, anything related to treaties is to benefit a control agenda, and it doesn't benefit our ability to step into, you know, our true divine power or birthright. Nobody wants to be enslaved or to be, you know, forced to breed, you know, but then there's another intervention of higher benevolent races, supposedly, that are creating breeding programs to offset this. So where can we just kind of step away from it and just really, you know, wake up and advance ourselves? Maybe this is going on, but, you know, those of us who aren't involved, you know, we can, you know, do all that we can to just advance ourselves in the here and now without getting caught up in all that. And that's the hope, because there's indigos and crystal kids, and you know, we're all seeded, and we're all made of, you know, something really incredible. That's why we're so sought after and targeted, because we have really, really advanced DNA and a great potential. But, you know, we've got all these other things trying to interact with us, and, you know, we just really need to interact with ourselves and each other, and that's what unity consciousness is really all about. But you know, these exchanges are, it's not just, okay, we're going to hand you these humans and children. It's in exchange for alien technologies, spacecraft blueprints, militarized weaponry, 0-point power source technology, and, you know, stuff like that. So it's like, okay, we'll give you this and you give us this. And then, you know, we still are in this duality of, okay, we got all these toys and you guys don't. And then it gets taken into space with these secret space programs and, Russia, China, United States, all, it's just, it doesn't help anything. It sort of creates a even heavier, a more advanced type of duality than, unity. But unity isn't about oneness either, because the New World Order, that concept is all about sort of a controlled kind of oneness. But where we're integrated more into a machine than appreciating that diversity can be in harmony, that we can all be different and still learn to blend together.
Yeah, truth is stranger than fiction, isn't it? Especially when you mentioned the word here, secret space program. That's been going on for a while. What can you say about that?
Well, there's a lot of different levels to it. There's colonies that are off planet. And there's different factions within the secret space program. So, there's the inability for those in those programs to really know what the full picture is. So, compartmentalism keeps it from, being understood by different people that are working for the secret space program on some of these different levels. They can't see the full picture, and they're, manipulated into thinking that they might be, serving, humanity in some sort of way when actually, it's something else. There's deception between the ranks in connection with information access. And it spreads, corruption and greed. And, there's just a ton of mind control that goes on within that institution. And, it plays out as horrific crimes against humanity. So these hidden agendas are to maintain, domination and enslavement and the ability to genetically modify humans and have mind control over the, population. The alien and advanced technology has been hidden by the elites and taken off planet. And so, with all these different levels, you got the military industrial complex secret space program. There's levels above that where it's not even about money or black ops projects. It's about just the feeding of on our life force. There's dark technologies to siphon and harvest our life force. And that's almost like the greatest currency over money. So there's all these different levels just to feed a very digressed, type of race that's using us as their power source instead of spirit, which is what ascended humans are learning to connect with. Get out of the religious mentalities and start really connecting with spirit, in order to upgrade and advance your human vessel. These races, these beings behind the secret space programs have compromised their DNA on purpose so that they wouldn't have the ability to do that because they want power and control. But now they're kind of in a survival and they need us as a food source in order to be able to even have a life cycle, if that makes any sense. So.
Yeah. Well,
there's several breakaway civilizations. They broke up into several breakaway civilizations, and and it's basically so that in this window period, instead of ascension, there's cataclysms. They go off to the colonies and the underground bases while the whole human race is compromised on the surface of the earth. And so this is part of my mission, is to keep that from happening. And I was recruited to go off planet in 2006, and I refused to go, and I chose to blow the whistle about it.
Yeah, you were recruited to go off the planet. Then offer was extended to you for to go off the planet for, what did they call it? Maybe a better place to live? Or
well, they said it was for my protection, but because I knew that these timelines and these agendas had gotten infiltrated, I had a feeling that this was, to use me, and it was a part of the New World Order agenda. Okay, we're going to go off planet, and there's going to be a false, catastrophic sort of timeline in play that is, being engineered through dark technologies, superstorms and catastrophes created. And so, it makes sense to colonize other planets and protect the human genome. But with these advanced technologies that can mess with nature, I was really questioning whether or not that was even necessary. And so I decided that I was going to research this stuff and expose this stuff. And I also knew that my mission or my work was really about being on Earth during this window period. And so, I think there were some well-intentioned agendas, just in case there were catastrophes. But this level of infiltration that took place after the Second World War pretty much took over everything. And most of these agendas, aren't really about protecting, humans, or else we wouldn't be so kept in the dark. We'd have an awareness of where our tax dollars go, which go into these black ops projects.
Yeah, what's going on then, especially with maybe the base on Mars, is that an extension of what was called Alternative 3 before, which is the brain drain and how to get people out there to start populating Mars? Was that it maybe?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
So in my presentations, I bring up alternatives 1, 2, and 3. And that was part of, I think, why I was recruited, because, I'm part of the Eisenhower bloodline, and these agendas started to get implemented during his administration in the event that there might have been catastrophes, which is how it was presented. But because after the Second World War, the defense departments and the space programs got infiltrated, and, these secret societies and hidden groups and all this alien technology that ended up in the hands of the cabal, it's like, okay, this probably isn't a positive agenda anymore. And so, yeah, I just wanted to make sure that I was uncovering all this and getting to understand it more so that I could, talk about it and share it with people. Whatever the cost, it doesn't matter. I mean, even if I was supposed to go to Mars, it would have played out differently. They would have treated me, differently. They would have listened to me more. Because I kept saying, why don't we address what's going on here on Earth? And I wasn't really allowed to have much of a say, and it just seemed very controlling. But yeah, it's an alternative 3 scenario. And so I came up with alternative 4, which is the empowerment of the human spirit and our ability to come together in unity and to bust the crimes against humanity, and to really, help this planetary body move into this next phase that, was known by the ancients. I mean, it's an ascension window period. Why depopulate? Why go off planet? And what is going to happen to surface Earth and humans?
Yeah.
Compromised by these dark technologies even further. It's like a lot to unwind and sort of neutralize and remove from the human race. But, if we're all on board, we stand a chance here, instead of having this drag out for God knows how long, if, we just play by whatever they want or go with any agenda they present. Because the thing is, most of the time they're manipulative. The people that they set up to impact me or draw me in, they made them feel like heroes. They thought they were doing good work. They thought, this was the right thing to do. They weren't evil. They weren't bad people, but the people behind them certainly did not have our best interests at heart. It was just mind control stuff.
Yeah, I can see that, because maybe a lot of them thought, oh, I'm going to be part of saving the human race by going there and or recruiting you. But maybe they didn't understand the deeper agenda behind it. It appears to me almost like Earth is being terraformed for a species that no longer need oxygen or a clean environment to live in. Could there be something to that? Yep.
And so we have to remember, I mean, this is the Mother Earth domain. This connects to the goddess. This connects to 0 point energy. It connects to the Father. There's a divine template of the masculine and feminine within the Earth grids and in our DNA. And this is worth fighting for, and it doesn't have to be, a battle or a war. It's a war that we need to win within ourselves, because ultimately it's our consciousness that's targeted, our belief systems, the contracts and agreements we make, we have to really look at, because we have the ultimate override frequency. We have the ability to override whatever it is that's going on. The greatest thing that's being kept from us, though, is our confidence in knowing this. I mean, we feel so limited or at the mercy of all this stuff, but we have connection to higher dimensional energies that can get everything back on track. And from my resources and certain people that I really have faith in, we are on track for this organic ascension, not this other type of thing. And even though it still might go on and we can't completely make it go away, more than likely it's just going to form its own trajectory timeline that becomes an experience for those that get wrapped up in it and maybe need to learn and grow from it. Maybe they need to digress in order to, but the thing is, nothing can take away what's real. Just like we can be mind controlled and we can be manipulated, but deep down we are still who we are. There might be a delay in our ability to express it because something else is influencing us, but ultimately you can't destroy that spiritual spark or that soul essence You can compromise the mind and the ego to separate from it or not, stand true to it. But that's, something that can only really be temporary in the larger scheme of things. For some, yeah, they might linger in that for a long, long time. And for others, this is what waking up's about. You snap out of it and you protect what's sacred.
Yeah. And for the, I have a contact in Europe. He works for the Danish government, and he told me that a lot of the reasons for what government officials are doing, especially getting the European continent overrun by Muslims, and there are many other things when it comes to pollution and so on. They have been promised immortality. Well, we hear now that the technology for immortality is already here. They can download the knowledge and experiences and memories of your brain into a computer. And you can place that chip in an Android, and you could technically have immortality. And whether it's that or not, I don't know. But like the big players in the European government, they have been promised immortality, and they are doing the bidding on somebody off the planet. Could there be something to what this guy from Denmark is telling me?
Oh, absolutely. Oh, yeah. I mean, that's the whole deal. It's transhumanism. Transhumanism is just an imitation of what's already organic and a part of nature. And it basically takes an imitation of it and creates an ability to sustain something without needing the morality or the spirituality as a way of, or the means by which it's powered. Instead, it's powered by, technology. So, and that, eventually can destroy itself. I mean, transhumanism, artificial intelligence ends up consuming itself because it's not biological. So yes, it can promise immortality, but does it cease to exist, even though based on the way it's functioning, it appears to be immortal? It doesn't necessarily guarantee it. And without the spiritual or moral development or, exercising the right use of power, it's creating, a major conflict for itself. And and the thing is, people like to take shortcuts. They want the easy way out. And for some things, yeah, that's great, especially when it comes to, injuries and illness. We want, rapid healing. But the thing is, we're the most advanced technology, and we have all that within us. So we need technologies that help us to reawaken that, technologies that are compatible with our biological nature and our soul essence, that are in harmony with nature, not these imitation versions that, end up destroying themselves, because the thing is, it further divides, and who gets it? Just the rich, just the elitists, just the ones that are privileged. I mean, that false sense of privilege. And is it really going to reach out to those that need to be fed and clothed around the world? That's the thing. It's like, these advancements are great as long as they meet the needs of those that are in desperate situations. If it still maintains this sort of selfishness and this hoarding, and it's only us, and you guys are lucky that we just, upgrade your iPhones, and you have to buy into this and sell your soul to it in order to, benefit from it, then that's a bunch of BS. Because, look at all these cloning projects, to use organs of clones to, give to the elitists. I mean, it's already being shown in movies that, yes, these advanced technologies exist, but it's still only benefiting some. And that's not a paradigm that we want to move into. We want to move into something that actually helps to heal and restore and rehabilitate the whole of it all. And that those that are corrupt, don't benefit anymore. They need to be held accountable. And it's not a punishment, it's a correction. And it's something that, can happen through the laws of, cosmic laws and natural laws. And also, whatever kind of justice or divine justice that can be created without, the same model necessarily being applied. I don't know. But the things have to flip around because, everything's sort of still inverted. But we stand on the threshold of being able to see the crimes against humanity be exposed. And so my hope for disclosure is that it's not just, oh, the ETs are coming and they've been breeding with us, and we've got, all these different types of groups, some benevolent, some not, but that, disclosure is really about busting the crimes against humanity and those beings or species, that are being invasive and going against people's consent, like a real multidimensional divine justice going on, where the real spirit energy, is really in power. And it can happen on this planetary body now that we're in alignment with the galactic plane. Before, it was very difficult because of the cataclysms and all sorts of things that threw the planet out of whack. And it's sort of like a spinal column getting thrown out of whack. The circulation of Kundalini isn't established. Now that the planetary body's repaired enough to be in alignment, the real regeneration and healing and purification can happen. Before, it was almost impossible. Now it's not. But again, they want to steer us down these other timelines, which is why there's been this secrecy and these hidden agendas. The reason it's been hidden is so that when this time comes, they can say, oh, here's disclosure. And it's not like, oh, we're finally going to tell you. It's more, we're going to tell you now because there's nothing you can do about it, because now we're here. We've integrated with you, we've bred with you, and disclosure is basically like, we didn't tell you too soon, because if we did, you might have stopped us. We're telling you when you really have no choice but to accept it. And so, we have to figure out how to not get drawn into that web and still maintain our sovereignty and still continue to advance ourselves, so we still have the opportunity to witness a truly organic ascension where we recognize that we're getting advanced as the most profound technology on a biological level, not a technological level.
Yeah, and maybe even having both of those technologies joined. And the mindset of the elite at that level is so strange that I think my impression is that I don't think it'll happen like it did in Africa. Well, in Rwanda, when several 100,000 people were killed over there. Afterwards, the people that did the killing, they came forward and said, yeah, I did this, but I asked for forgiveness, and they were forgiven. I'm not so sure that's going to work in America, because the factions of the government that is doing some of these things are so vile. They would rather kill every man, woman, and child on the planet than admit that they have done anything wrong.
Right, exactly.
That's pretty tough to say, but that's my impression.
Right. And the thing is, if they all can merge together, great. But, they're doing everything they can to make sure that doesn't happen. The thing is, there are advanced technologies that could be really, really helpful, that aren't based in mind control or transhumanism or artificial intelligence, that are, based in light and frequency and sound and color, that appeal to our senses, that allow something within us to awaken. But with these darker technologies of mind control and weather manipulation and geoengineering and, all these things that manipulate, yeah, it's not like, when they're getting busted, they're just going to come out and be like, okay, we're sorry. And yeah, let's hand over the technology. Most of that technology is not even healthy. More than likely, they're just going to want to do something really aggressive or pull themselves completely out by utilizing those technologies to, take them elsewhere. But the thing is, there's a lot of benevolent groups, and there's a lot, of stuff going on supposedly in the secret space program that's making sure that they are held accountable. But I take it all with a grain of salt when I hear whistleblowers. I don't have fixed beliefs. I certainly have an open mind to everything that whistleblowers share. And I do the same thing with myself as far as how I try and understand my own, Mars story and recruitment. I have to be flexible, because maybe it's not exactly what I thought. But, after all these years, it pretty much is. And I can say that most whistleblowers, I feel pretty confident about what they're sharing. And Corey Good talks about, the Solar Warden, being a more benevolent group that is holding the rest in check, and that, the artificial intelligence component is just really rampant. And, they create these artificial intelligence prophets that, really stand up for this sort of thing to convince the human race that this is a great idea, like the sound cloud, or the cloud that we can all merge our consciousness into. And so, using terminologies that remind us of ascension, but it's that false, more technologically based one. And I'm not saying technology is bad. It's just, we don't want anything hidden, though. We need to know what we're voting for and what we're choosing to agree to. And the thing is, we never vote for the full picture. I mean, most things are a facade. So they have all these people that represent these agendas that are making it look good. They don't talk about the ramifications. They don't talk about the fact that only some benefit and not everybody does. And they just end up luring all these people in. And then what happens? They digress as a race, and then they come back and abduct us. So it ends up, it's like, okay, go down that transhumanism timeline, everyone. And then you'll find yourself like a gray going back and abducting humans to correct your mistake.
Yeah. And that seems to me like what they're doing. And now we're at the top of the hour. So let's take a short break again, and we'll be back talking with Laura Eisenhower. And we will be back in right about probably 4 minutes. So we will talk to you then.
The rising rate of autism is not just concerning, it's a disaster. No matter what the cause of it is something that everyone should be acutely aware of and actively helping out those in the community that have it. That is why Adventures in Autism was created. Adventures in Autism is a show inspired by our life with our son Seth, and the many experiences his autism has brought to our lives. Each episode we bring you the topic of the week, news about autism, and resources to help you and your family or friends out in their own adventures with autism. Tune in Mondays at noon and midnight on lnmradionetwork.com or openeyesnetwork.com and get involved in the community. Let our experiences be an inspiration to you.
Attention L&M Radio Network listeners. Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or Wi-Fi available, you can still listen to every minute of the L&M Radio Network by calling 605-562-4203? No smartphone app or internet needed. Saves your data plan and no extra cost if you have unlimited minutes. Call 605-562-4203 to listen to the L&M Radio Network on any phone, anytime, anywhere.
There are days that the red pill is bitter in my stomach, but I can't get it back out. I think because I have to. I speak because I have no choice. I walk through this dark age we're in with open eyes. Listen to Open Eyes on latenightinthemidlands.com. And together, maybe we won't stumble and fall. The Late Night in the Midlands radio network is deeply devoted to you, the listener. We feel it is necessary to bring you all of the information that you can use in your life. Each and every day you will find something to listen to here, and whether you come away from the shows informed, inspired, or entertained, it is our passion. We don't bow to corporations, and we don't have handlers to tell us what not to talk about. We bring you everything. Late Night in the Midlands, however, is fully listener supported. We need your help to stay on the air and to make sure that we get the bills paid. We need your help to keep the truth alive. If you feel that you have gotten anything out of Late Night in the Midlands, we would appreciate your support. You can become a subscriber and help us out on a monthly basis, or if you'd like, a one-time donation is fully appreciated as well. Every year, the average household in America spends over $3,000 on entertainment alone. If you could help us with just a tiny fraction of that amount, you would make all of the difference. Go to latenightinthemidlands.com and click on the subscribe button. Thank you, and as always, keep yourself informed.
Hello, hello, and we are back with the Universal Consciousness Show, and we are speaking here with Laura Eisenhower. We are talking about what in the world is going on out there, and not just here on Earth, but everywhere else. We seems to be raising in vibration, and this creates problems from people that doesn't want to be raised in vibration. They are giving us a little flack over things like this. But Laura, are you still with us there?
Yes, I'm here.
All right. You were talking before the break here also, and all these things that is happening and can be done both by the good side and the so-called bad side. Can that be overridden? Since we live in a mind-created universe, we could possibly design our future in our mind and then go back and visit that every day and maybe just bypass some of the bad stuff that otherwise could happen. Are you thinking about anything like that?
Oh, absolutely. That's absolutely what it all really comes down to. I mean, here we are in this process of healing our DNA. We're switching on dormant strands, and we're recognizing that we're creative beings, and we are born into a biological human vessel that's a creative tool. I mean, it's a high level technology that, is a powerful manifester. I mean, we manifest and create all the time, but if we have the wrong instructions being given to our creative channels, we're going to enable the things that we don't want. We're going to help them manifest. That's why there's false flags, so that we begin to step into a timeline that we don't want unless we can wake up to it. We begin to buy into fear or a doom and gloom scenario, or, we feel like we're at the mercy for everything going on around us. And that's just not true. So the hope is that we'll all kind of ascend together collectively. But if that doesn't happen, we're not going to be taken down because others aren't on board. I mean, this is our direct connection with spirit and earth that determines, who we are and where we're heading. And our disconnect from it is going to have ramifications that we're going to have to, deal with. But ultimately, that's going to show us where we need to correct ourselves. The thing is, these beings, have a life cycle with this technology. The ones that are 46,000 years into the future or 52,000 years into the future are time traveling back in order to, interface or make contact or do abductions. Because where they ended up on their timeline wasn't so positive. But we have the choice right now to not go down that road. And that's, why it's so important to talk about this stuff, because, we don't have to agree to anything that we don't want to. And, when we hold intentions, when we have a focus, that's the instructions our creative channels are going to pick up on. And that's where we start to see synchronicities. We start to see, a divine flow. We start to really witness magic. But we have to have consistency. We have to, also work with the laws of nature. When you plant a seed, it's going to take maybe a while for the tree to, pop up, or the flower. But, if you're consistent, if you put it in, a place where it gets plenty of sunlight and water, nothing's going to get in the way. But you also have to protect it from being sprayed. You have to protect it from being trampled on. So we need to protect ourselves and strengthen our auras. Otherwise, we know exactly what we're doing without needing to know. I mean, we're a part of, what's going on in the cosmos, these planetary alignments. We're a part of the earth grids and the alchemy that's happening, in the earth. That's what's real. Whatever other timelines, are manipulated versions of it, those things are pretty unstable. And yes, humans will walk down those pathways, but it doesn't replace what's organic. It doesn't replace the positive ascension timeline. It just distracts and diverts people away from what's real. And that's also a mirror of what's, held within our own soul and our spiritual energies, our multidimensional bodies. This is something that we're built to, move into. If we choose not to, that's okay, but we got to know what we're dealing with, so we're not making choices that we think are good for us when they actually aren't, which is what transhumanism, is. But yeah, we are the creators here. But why have we incarnated so many times? We're learning the right use of power. We're learning, to, protect what's sacred. We're learning the importance of integrity, because the misuse of power only leads to looping in a karmic kind of, patterns that, or ancestral patterns that we, aren't able to break, or, agreements to agendas that control us and do it all for us. So we absolutely can step out of all of it. That's what's available to us. And there's a lot to actually celebrate, because it's simply devoting oneself and just saying, hey, this is what I want. and knowing that the rest, you know, is it's already happening. We don't have to rack our brains. Like, how are we going to do this? We simply just need to make an agreement to it and allow the healing and the purification and the upgrades to take place and breathe through it without misunderstanding it. You know, and we don't have to agree to another extraterrestrial race either. We can agree to our higher self, which has connections with higher dimensional beings, but we can just like devote to what is most familiar to us, which is our soul, which is our, you know, connection to spirit, which is our connection to earth. It doesn't have to be any more complicated than that. And I think the more we complicate it, the more, you know, lost we feel. And then we're making agreements that we don't feel that good about, whether it's with an ET race or some deity or some being, you know. I mean, the thing is, those benevolent beings will be there, but we have to first commit to our higher self in order to make sure that we're connecting with the right ones, because there's false channelers that are channeling ascended masters that are actually archons that are disguised as masters, you know?
Yeah, so it kind of sounds to me, actually, if we discover who we are and we discover our real power of our mind, we can avoid this incarnation loop that we're talking about.
I absolutely feel that. Yep. And
Yeah.
as an astrologer, what I like about astrology is it backs up some of this stuff. It's not just, you know, the thing is Neptune connects to our multidimensional energy and our creative imagination. If you can think it, if you can feel it, if you can imagine it, you can create it. The only thing is we have to be consistent enough to nurture those creations into manifestation. But there's really nothing that we can't do. The manipulations that we've been going through are trying to, you know, keep us from our DNA upgrading. It's trying to keep our consciousness in lockdown. It's trying to program our creative channels. But, you know, we can heal all of that with, you know, being able to raise our frequency beyond it, you know, knowing that our consciousness has the override frequency and that it can dismantle implants. It can neutralize dark weaponry and assaults from the inside out. You know, we don't have to, you know, go after it. We can just internally combat it by allowing ourselves to recognize the targets and the manipulations and catch them before they end up taking over us. You know, so if we find ourselves being manipulated and it makes us angry or wanting to, you know, be harmful towards self or others, you know, we can stop ourselves and say, wait a second, you know, is that really coming from me? Is that really, you know, I mean, people are targeted all the time. We have to nip these things in the bud, like immediately. We have to, you know, be conscious in every moment. And if we are, then we can override this stuff. If we're unconscious, then, you know, we might find, geez, you know, that was a horrible year. And, you know, I can't believe I did this or did that or agreed to this. You know, we wouldn't make these agreements if we are operating from, you know, constant awareness.
Yeah, I know that feeling. You know, we make
change.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's better to wake up and look back and say, what was I thinking, than not wake up at all.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, after, you know, hindsight is 20/20, right? We got to remember that. And from what listening to what you're talking about, you are speaking of things that the Gestapo or the cabal or the criminal syndicate or whatever you want to call the people behind the curtain, they don't want you to talk like this. Have you had any flack? Have you been attacked or threatened in any way?
Oh, gosh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, you know, trolls are constant. I have over 200 people on my block list because, you know, they send people to just kind of harass me. I have plants that have been placed on my path all throughout my life. Hidden weaponry. I've been dealing with hidden weaponry since I was a kid, but I didn't understand it. I didn't know how to explain it to people. And then I went to a clairvoyant institute where they pointed this out. They said, there's, you know, because I thought, okay, you know, I was blaming myself. I'm like, you must just have terrible karma. You know, what is going on? Why can't you, you know, effectively create anything? Or why is there always disasters and chaos and negative, awful people that, you know, turn on you? You know, like what have I done to deserve this? And so I went to a clairvoyant institute. It was sort of by accident. They said, you've got some massive hidden weaponry on you. And it's like, it's not anything that you're really doing wrong. It's that they have their attention on you. They don't want you to do certain things. And that was before my Mars recruitment. And I was like, okay, that helped prepare me for what was ahead, because they gave me a lot of money. They helped me to see, like, you know, you were pre-targeted before birth. They're trying to steer you down a timeline. And they said, you know, you're trying to clear inorganic entities from wormholes. And I was like, oh my God, these people actually know what they're talking about, because nobody else has ever been able to see this before. And I'm not like all about, you know, I mean, there's some psychics that I would rather avoid, but, you know, there was definitely a few of them that could really, you know, see what was going on, what my greater mission was, and the level of targeting I was dealing with. Most of my partners in my life have either been plants or they've been targeted to target me. And, you know, I don't say that lightly. I mean, this was after like a lot of validation and practical proof. And then when I was recruited to go to Mars, my partner had told me that they had a list of men that they had, the Cabal had, that they were training to put on my path in order to trip me up. But then he would only say that, and then all of a sudden, like, he would get a phone call and they would give him some code over the phone and he would switch into a different personality. And then I started realizing, oh my gosh, okay, I started to learn about handlers, because he referred to a handler. I started to learn about multi-generational mind control and some of these projects and my labs, you know, things that like went way beyond what I ever expected I'd be getting my head wrapped around. I mean, I was born with this mission, but I was looking at like, you know, patriarchy. I get that there's dark agendas. I know that there's hidden projects, and I know that there's mind control and social engineering, but the layers upon layers of stuff going on with these projects and secret space programs and all these different programs and agendas, like, really blew my mind. So it's not just internet research. You know, when I share, you know, my information, it's coming from firsthand experience. I mean, I learned sort of like without having anything to refer to, because when I was recruited, there was no Project Camelot or whistleblowers that, you know, I was speaking with. I hadn't researched them. I was like just trying to navigate through it all, and that was a massive targeting to get me off planet. And since then, I would say, you know, there is still targeting. You know, you go to events, you get blasted with some sort of weaponry, and my nervous system's pretty shaky, and I know I talk fast. That might be a symptom.
Yeah. Well, that for fast-thinking people, we always talk fast, so that's okay.
Right. But yeah, no, there's definitely like been targeting and things that I've gone through that I can't even begin to describe, where, you know, I'm hanging on to life by threads. It's just so hard. You know, I've gone to the ER so many times for like my heart just going nuts on me, feeling like I was going to have a heart attack or a stroke, which I think was definitely weaponry, because I certainly don't eat bad or high, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Well, you got to remember, these people, they have long memories and they don't give up. So you got to be really careful. You could probably, there's possibly ways with technology also that you could guard yourself. You know, you heard about Faraday cages and things like that. So, and I know I saw on a, oh gosh, it was a website, I think, coming out of Venezuela. They're making a, this is a novelty that I want to mention it anyway. They're making a regular suit, just a business suit, but first of all, it's bulletproof. And for the second, it has wiring in it that actually creates a Faraday cage around your body, so electronic weaponry cannot affect you.
Excellent.
And when I saw this, I thought, that would be an interesting thing to have. Of course, I don't have, you know, enemies that I know of in those arenas. But if it ever gets to that point because of what I'm doing, then, gee, you know, maybe that's a thought.
Yeah, totally. Right now I work, you know, mostly with crystals and stones and essential oils. But yeah, gosh, I'm open.
Yeah. And I was going to ask you too, when it comes to the alien presence and things in the sky that really shouldn't be there, according to our present day accepted science, have you had any sightings or any presence or anything that has from extra dimensional things or UFOs that you can say you've seen?
Well, I've definitely seen some interesting things. I wouldn't call myself really a contactee. I certainly don't have any abduction memories, but I have a ton of clients that have. So I hear their stories constantly, and I work with them and the beings that they associate with. So I generally have contact through people. Like, you know, I relate to the beings that they're dealing with based on what that person's dealing with. So, you know, I've witnessed so much just through my clients. I mean, people that are in breeding programs, people that are getting, you know, taken, people that are really struggling that, you know, come to me confidentially. They're not, you know, sensationalizing anything. I mean, it's obvious and clear. I did have some contact experiences when I was a kid that they were preparing me for this particular window period, you know, talking about stargates and timelines and, you know, a lot of the terminologies I use today, which I wasn't quite clear on back then, but, you know, really about the importance of this window period and to not allow myself to do anything other than what I believe to be is my truth. You know, like, don't let them destroy you, don't let them take you away. And I didn't know what they were talking about, but obviously, like, probably they meant, you know, to Mars. I wasn't going to go anyway, but it certainly helped to have a little bit of that contact. You know, I see interesting crafts, you know, when I go to like a SETI ranch or, you know, some of those places, but, you know, I wouldn't say that, you know, there's beings that I talk to on a regular basis, or, you know, I don't consider myself a channeler. I just, you know, try and, you know, connect to spirit and intuit my way through everything, and, you know, use that. But no, but I definitely, I see a lot of contact and abduction scenarios when I do readings. It's unbelievable how many interesting things that tie together that are similar stories I find over the years.
Yeah, and you know, I spent 23 years as a pilot, and you know, I flew a lot at night, and when you look up into the sky, you see goofy stuff that really shouldn't be there or shouldn't be able to do what it did.
Right.
So it is all over the place. All people have to do is to go outside and keep looking up, and sooner or later, probably most likely sooner, they're gonna see stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It's all there.
Right.
And I want to also ask you, you know, the history that has been presented to us isn't quite the way it is. Could you speak a little bit to the history of mankind? When I say mankind, I mean basically all races, if we even consider differences in races. There's just an appearance of it. But where do we come from?
Well, I mean, as far as when we first started taking some sort of human form, that would be like the Lyran system, and that was considered dimensions 10, 11, and 12. So when we look at our 12th strand DNA potential, and we look at the upper strands 10, 11, and 12, that particular vibration we used to embody when we were in the Lyran system. And then they, you know, the original Atlantis and Lemuria was on Tara, which is dimensions 4, 5, and 6, and that was Harmonic Universe 2. And there was the planet Tiamat, and Tiamat ended up exploding. And because of that explosion, we ended up sinking into this physical density in this lower Earth harmonic universe. And so it like collapsed into it, and more planets came into the picture, and we started to go into reincarnation scenarios. And then the root races came about: Hyperborea, Polaris, Lemuria, Atlantis. But these were different. This was different than the original Atlantis and Lemuria. It was now like a root race. And then, of course, you know, when we first came here, the whole idea was that we would rebuild our DNA, that we would go through human incarnations in order to repair our DNA. Because when this planetary body exploded, you know, we had already been somewhat infiltrated and impacted by, you know, lower creator gods and, you know, hybridization and manipulation and, you know, that were attempting to steer us away from true source. And then it got to the point where, okay, now planet explodes, and we sink into this lower density, and we've been learning kind of the right use of power. And, you know, we were, you know, somewhat limited, but it wasn't as a curse so much. It was as an opportunity to help us to rebuild and recover and rehabilitate. But we got take advantage of in the process, because these galactic wars ended up stepping down. Then we got, you know, the Anunnaki. We've got different rebellions. We got different dark technologies put in place. We have, you know, the Lemurian Holocaust, the Atlantean cataclysms, and then the formation of the Cabal, and how that was working with the Orion group, which is, you know, the Orion War stepping down. So, I mean, the history is really, really vast, but the whole idea is that, okay, you know, we've got this planetary body that formed, this new kind of creation, and supposedly, which isn't a supposedly to me, I mean, this is sort of like, I know this, but, you know, people obviously take what resonates and leave the rest. The mother energy morphed into the physical planet, and that's why it's a Mother Earth energy. That's why it's an ascension planet, because the mother energy, realizing that the souls were being led astray and that we are in this complicated dilemma of needing to repair ourselves and rehabilitate, you know, being further compromised, the mother energy decided to become the planetary consciousness. A portion of her being ended up being a part of the planetary consciousness. But because Tiamat had exploded, and it was a Sophionic planet, and it held the original balance of the sacred union, because of that fragmented explosion and the trauma that took place, it was fed upon and used by Satanists and Luciferianism to feed on, to utilize those trauma wounds to manipulate humanity. and to use the portion of that exploded planet to birth archons and do all this crazy stuff with that fragmented planetary consciousness that ended up being harnessed by these darker agendas. So we keep reincarnating until we sort of like understand the larger picture, but we're not given that. You know, this is a complete and total hidden history. We don't learn it in school. We don't learn about soul alchemy in school. We don't learn about extraterrestrials. We learn about dinosaurs, you know, and we learn about world wars and the sort of the surface layer of our history, but that gets rewritten. I mean, history is changing in front of our eyes based on how they're manipulating timelines and rewriting documents and, you know, having time travelers go back and change the way some of these things unfolded so that we have a completely different history, and it's based in Nazi ideology, really. I mean, we're really still being invaded on that level. And the only way to really win the war is to win the war within yourself and get your consciousness back and you know, drop, you know, all the division. You know, we can't, you know, hold any historical resentments against each other. We got to recognize the game that's been played to pit us against each other so that we can't unify, and so that these other things, you know, are able to, you know, take advantage of the fact that we're not coming together as a humanity, which they set up on purpose throughout history through these world wars and all these traumas that we've gone through with these cataclysms, so that when this window period happens, we're too traumatized to even know how to come together, let alone be sovereign.
Mm-hmm.
Trauma
Absolutely.
Manipulative. Yeah.
I absolutely agree to that one. I think most of our future is lodged in our mind. I remember something that I know I'm a Star Trek fan. And I remember Jean-Luc Picard standing on the bridge looking at the big screen, and the big cube of the Borg was sitting right in the middle of the screen. And the Borg came on and said, resistance is futile. You will surrender. And he said, turn off the screen. He turned to his number one and he said, I would rather outthink the enemy than outfighting him.
Mm-hmm.
When he was opposed by such a force like that, he turned to the mind also. And if we do that, if we look into the future and create our own future in our mind before we go live it, that should really do some amazing things for us, shouldn't it?
Absolutely. Yep. Yep.
And we're not taught how to do this. In fact, we're not even taught how to use our mind. We're taught maybe a little bit how to use the brain, but not the mind.
Right, right. I mean, there's creativity, there's music, you know, but that's really as far as we go in terms of, you know, really functioning in a level of, you know, liberation and freedom, you know, creative writing, you know, people writing books, you know, but it's more, it's still in a cage, you know, it's like we were born into captivity like zoo animals, and we're only taught to play within the confines of the zoo. You know, we're not taught to know what our natural habitat's even really about, what our true history is and what we're really made of, and how our potential extends way beyond the walls that we were born within, you know, yeah. So it's something that, you know, you have to be very pioneering in order to find. You have to reach, you have to be curious enough and bold enough to reach into those hidden mysteries and be willing to integrate them and empower them and embody.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you meditate?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say I'm as disciplined as I should be, but I used to meditate a lot, and I'm getting back, you know, in the flow of that. I have a lot more downtime than I've had in a while. I'm living in a, you know, a very peaceful area, and yeah, so meditation and being in nature, walking outside barefoot's really good. But meditation, yeah, deep breathing and really connecting in with your core, you know, that's where it's at. I mean, if we don't take the time to do that, we're just constantly bombarded by, you know, frequency manipulation, just cell towers and, you know, what's coming off of our computers. And it's just.
I know. Oh, do I know. Oh, and we're at the bottom of the hour again. So let's take another break, and then we'll be back speaking with Laura Eisenhower again. And I will be back in about 3 to 4 minutes or so.
Open Eyes Network now airs a live simulcast on YouTube. Our YouTube channel, youtube.com/c/Open Eyes Network, features not just our live content, but other videos as well, and is always active. So now you can tune in many different ways. Open Eyes Network shows air Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time live. Be sure to visit OpenEyesNetwork.com to find easy-to-use links to get to all of the places that you want to listen to our shows. And don't forget, all of our shows will now be archived as well on YouTube.
There is a better radio show, beyond that which is known to the people. It is a radio show more informative than others, and as timeless as infinity. It is the equilibrium between light and dark, between the sheeple and the paranormal, and it is heard at the base of man's ignorance and at the summit of his knowledge. This is the radio show of imagination, a show we call The Secret Teachings.
Open Eyes is dedicated to finding the truth in all matters. We are not afraid to be politically incorrect or to ask questions. Whether it is the paranormal, government cover-ups, the dark agenda that the puppet masters have in store for us, or aliens and UFOs, nothing remains hidden. Listen to Open Eyes, Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays starting at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on LateNightInTheMidlands.com or OpenEyesNetwork.com. Open hearts, open minds, open eyes. Ben Franklin said, "If you do the same thing tomorrow as you did today, you're going to get the same tomorrow as you got today." Changing the world starts with you, and changing you starts with changing the way you think. Late Night in the Midlands can help. Listen to all of our shows at LateNightInTheMidlands.com, because things really do need to change.
Hello, and we are back with the Universal Consciousness Show, and we're talking with Laura Eisenhower about all the things that we're not supposed to know about. And now, before we go into anything else, I want to mention that in about a month or so, you are doing a lecture out in the desert. Maybe you could talk a little bit about that, because that sounds very interesting, and people really should consider going there.
Yes, I will be speaking at Contact in the Desert. It's in Indian Wells, California. It's the first week of June. I assume it's the first weekend in June, and I'll be doing a lecture and a workshop, and it's going to be about the new divine human, the new paradigm divine human, and things about this new phase in our ascension cycle. I'll also be speaking at the New Living Expo in San Mateo, California, the last weekend of April, so this month, and pretty much speaking on the same lines as what I'll be sharing at Contact. But yeah, it's a really great event. Contact in the Desert. I mean, lots and lots of speakers: Richard Dolan, Michael Sala, Corey Good, David Wilcock. The list is pretty endless, so you can find that online, contactinthedesert.com. And I think it's my 5th year speaking with Contact in the Desert.
Okay, yeah. What's the website where they can get some more information on that again?
I believe it's contactinthedesert.com. Let me just double check.
Okay.
Yeah, contactinthedesert.com.
Aha, that sounds excellent. Yeah, that's I've heard about. They've done this for many years now, and I've had people come back that have been there, and they speak very highly of it. There's a lot of good new information, and a lot of the stuff that we hear about later, they showed up there first. So this is a good one.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, we were talking before about your recruitment to Mars, but what is on the moon?
Well, I mean, I've never, myself been there, but there's there's a lot going on there. I mean, it's considered an artificial satellite, and there's a lot of whistleblower reports of things going on the dark side of the moon, and I mean, I would say that there's a lot of ET alien activity there, and things related to the secret space program, and the artificial component. There would be sort of a mind control operation going on there too, I would imagine. So, but
and there is a book that was put together by KGB. They call I forget the title of it. It's the Russian alien something or other, and they say that they are expecting to be at least 60 different alien races visiting Earth from time to time. Could there be something to that?
Yeah, I've heard bigger numbers, like more than 100 interacting with our governments. And there's supposedly 22 different programs going on, and there's 22 different ET genetics that we carry, and so there's programs connected with it. So if it relates to our genetics, then maybe that's how we're so easily controlled, is because there's a genetic component involved. But I mean, there's a lot of interaction. There's a lot of different kind of species out there. So I almost see like space like the ocean. Look at all the creatures in the ocean. On all these different levels and layers of the ocean, some on the ground level, some closer to the surface of the ocean. But so it's going to be interesting to see where we are in the future when there's more openness with our greater galactic community. And that's why it's so important for us to be able to upgrade and be prepared for it, because, they have advanced technologies, or they have advanced consciousness, or they have advanced negativity, and they're very good at whatever it is that they want to control. They're very obviously, we know that. So we don't want to be so vulnerable, and this is a real opportunity to be able to step it up. But even if we don't feel as advanced as we could be, we have to know that it is within reach, and we can invoke assistance and support and guidance. I mean, that we have helpers that we can, but they need to be asked. They're not just going to do it for us. We have to make sure that we ask for the kind of help that we want, and be a little bit more commanding of our own physical space and our creative energy, like you were saying, as far as what we would like to see manifest. We got to utilize this vessel that we are put in, and allow it to serve us, instead of feeling like it's limiting us.
Yeah, and I think some of those extraterrestrial beings coming here, some of them have some spiritual development or knowledge, but there may be others that all they have is technical knowledge, and they come in there, they're flying tin cans, and they show up as UFOs possibly, but there are others that shows up as light beings, and they're just points of light moving, not necessarily that big, and they just, you cannot see them except as light. And these are very I had an experience with that, and they show up just poof out of nothing, and then they're there, they can communicate with you, and then they're gone again. They don't need a tin can to travel around, but some of these that only have technical knowledge, they need that tin can to travel in.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And do you remember also the a few years ago they found these mummies down in Peru, the big, the small white ones that now they did a DNA test on it and said, oh yeah, this is a female, it's a human DNA. Well, I would say it is obviously an alien species, but they looked at the DNA and they found some similarities to humans, so their excuse is that they're human. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I would say, we need to be open to the fact that there is a lot of non-humanness, not to be afraid of that. And we've been all sorts of different forms too. I mean, again, like you were saying, that word alien doesn't need to be so alien.
No, because if you look at the DNA of absolutely anything that is walking around, then it has legs, it has arms, it has a head, it has different parts that you will find the similarities in DNA between us and those on those mummies that they found. So they can say, oh yeah, the same thing. They got DNA that matches us. Of course it did. It has arms and legs, and there'll be some match. So they can use that excuse to explain it away that it's not really an alien. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it clearly is not, human. I mean, I don't know why there's such a resistance to allowing humans to be open to things that are beyond this planet. I mean, hidden agendas for control would be the reason for why they don't want us to know some things, but we should be able to explore beyond without it being so, threatening. It's just ridiculous.
Yeah, it amazes me that what more so amazes me that is that people actually buy this. They just believe, oh yeah, the government says that it's not an alien, so it's not an alien. Well, then again, we can look back into the Sumerian tablets. And on the walls of the temples and in Egypt, they have drawings and they have pictures and they have language speaking to an alien presence. Of course, if you go back into the Anunnaki of the Sumerian tablets, then you'll find out that they actually created a human, and they did it through genetic manipulations of their own and a species that already was there at the time in Africa, Eastern Africa. So I'm still not totally sure, where do we actually come from?
Yeah, well,
the physical part at least.
Right. Yeah. I mean, there's definitely, we're all carrying a physical vessel that has undergone genetic manipulation, but as far as our soul, I mean, we're from all over, and it's so clear. Yeah, people resist it. It's like, if you didn't learn it in school, people are closed off to it. If we started getting an education about this stuff when we were children, then we'd be far more equipped to, even handle the hidden elements of it all. I mean, people are just trying to get their heads wrapped around that there's even ETs, let alone ETs with agendas working with our government, or ones that are benevolent that can, assist us if we, step up to the plate. And so, there's people that are just at such a beginning level of it all that are in denial that our skies are even being sprayed, even though it's damn clear. It's like, no matter how real something is, people still deny that it has any validity. People's foundation is way too shattered by things that they weren't conditioned to believe, that they're afraid to, move in that direction. They're too fixed or attached. And they're just, and it's a fear thing. But, that's all going to change because, we're just trying to warm people up. And then it's just going to be in everybody's face. And then they're going to look back and say, oh yeah, those folks that were talking about this for years. Okay.
And then when they have that, excuse me, when they have that experience and they find out that, oh, that is not quite what the government told me. And then they're going to ask themselves, okay, so they lied about this. What else did they lie about?
Yeah. Yeah. And a lot's being exposed anyway that makes most of these politicians look bad, but it's going to get a whole lot worse because people still make excuses for them. Yeah. And if they say it, then, people just immediately nod their heads, or, there's just a battle on both sides of, but a whole new model has to come forward because government is about control, but, there's so many people on the planet that, yeah, there has to be ways to manage the massive numbers. But, the right leaders have to be put in place in order to empower the populace to not be so dependent. And we're in a system that wants that dependency. And so with that dependency comes being very susceptible to all this deception. And yeah, when it does finally get proven and they'll realize the government's knew all along, it's going to be very hard to vote anybody into office without because the thing is, if we get cheated on in life, if we get backstabbed by our best friends, we tend to be wary about the next people that we get close to. We tend to develop trust issues. So it's going to change the whole nature of the way people relate to the system. People are going to feel that trauma of, oh, I trusted you before, or, people are going to want a whole new way. And I see that's what's building in our community, I mean, it's not necessarily like, a government type scenario, but this is where the truth comes in. This is where you'll find healers and support and compassion and camaraderie, you know, on the level of the difficulty connected to conspiracy, and also the spiritual support of, you know, learning what it means to fall back on the self and come together. And who else talks about it but people like us?
Yeah. And I think, you know, corruption is in government is, I think it's very few people actually can deny that or don't believe that it actually exists. But there's another concept too that is totally embedded in government, and that is stupidity. And you know, they get their brother-in-law contracts, and they do all these behind the door dealings to favor certain people. And I saw a hearing, there was a congressional hearing, but there was one of the Congress members was talking to a military official, and this congressional member, he was just fidgeting around all the time, and he asked the military, I think it was a general sitting there answering questions, and he asked him about Guam, and he says, the congressperson there said, "I'm worried about Guam." He says, "How many people live there?" And, you know, he got that explained. And he says, "I'm worried about that." He said, "If we get too many people, the island could tip over." And I almost fell off the chair. This was a guy in Congress that actually was serious about an island tipping over. How that is not even stupidity. That is just worse than that.
Oh, God. Yeah, I think most people are really disappointed with the stupidity and the deceptions, but at the same time, we're not given a lot of options, and there's a lot of projections on those that speak about these subjects. So people don't really know where to turn. They're like, well, if we go towards the conspiracy people, they're all kind of crazy and lunatic, and we can't really trust our governments. And, you know, people I think are going to go through a massive crisis, an identity crisis, and then they're going to start to feel better once these conspiracies start to become more of a reality to them. And then, you know, they won't be so afraid of, you know, this sort of thing. But yeah, I think most people are incredibly disappointed, and there's been enough, you know, indictments and, you know, pedophile rings coming to light and becoming more part of public awareness. And yeah, and it's just going to continue to build. Unfortunately, a lot of this stuff doesn't end up going public, you know, but.
Yeah, I think too that, you know, we hear these rumors about all these sealed indictments that has been coming down from the military tribunals that is set up and not made public. What do you think about? Do you think there will be a reckoning for corruption in government and the pedophiles that is walking around in the halls of Congress and so on? Do you think that?
Mm-hmm.
Do you think there will be actually a reckoning on that, or just going to slide into the mud like it's been before?
I don't think anybody's really going to allow it to slide into the mud. There's, I can't remember his name, Robert David Steele, I think his name is. He's yeah, I mean, he's a whistleblower of the CIA. He was a part of the CIA, or still is. And you know, people like him that are really working on this in a major way aren't going to allow these sort of things to slide. The people that brought some of this to light, that are waiting to see something, that are putting out that alternative news, you know, if all this starts to go hush hush, there's too many of us that won't allow it to go hush hush. We'll just end up getting louder. The thing is, you can't reverse something like this once it starts. Now, if you know, starts to get covered up, and we see, you know, YouTube videos being compromised and people being shut down, then we just find other platforms. And the thing is, they only push people to get louder the more they try and stop it. So I don't think there's any way to stop it at this point, but I think they're certainly going to make their attempts. But it's too large. It's larger. They didn't expect us to be doing as well as we're doing at this stage in the game. And I don't think they know what to do in the face of it. They thought we'd be far more enslaved. They'd have much more control. They'd utilize social media to monitor us. And yes, they're surveillancing and they're monitoring to a certain degree, but it's really us that are monitoring them. I always like to say, you think you're watching us, but we're watching you way more. And and you're the ones that are going to deal with the ramifications. So I don't think they know what to do. And I really don't think you can put a lid back on top of a volcano once it blows. And there's too many people with their intent on making sure that this goes somewhere. And it's not just us on the outside. It's, you know, people within those communities, those 3-letter organizations that are going to see to it. And fortunately, you know, people like him are still around, you know, and they must feel threatened to a certain degree. But, you know, they're saying that the public doesn't know just yet. They want to make sure that everything legally is put into place before they start disclosing it, or else it's just going to be more disappointment. But, you know, there's probably going to be some news on that soon. And it's definitely moving into that direction. So.
Yeah, and I think Steele, he totally agree with you on that one. He said when I interviewed him, he said that, you know, there's probably about 90% of people in government are really good people. They're caught in a bad system. Yeah. And the 10%, once they see it start going downhill, they will join the 90. So right. I think there's something to that. I don't think it's going to go away. There will be a reckoning of some type. I think that Hillary will actually possibly, well, there's a slip of the tongue there, but I think that she will get some reckoning at one point. And because I see that happening, there is no way that you can shut this off right now. And I think we dodged a bullet when she did not become president, because we would have been deep in a World War III right now.
Oh, yeah. I literally felt like I was suffocating, you know, right before the election. And I was just like, oh my gosh, you know, this could go either way. And it was just like, I felt like I was going to die. And then something lifted and I'm like, oh my gosh, I bet she didn't win, because all of a sudden I could breathe again, but I hadn't checked to see. And then I saw that she hadn't won and I was like, yes. And it doesn't mean like, I think Trump's the greatest, but he certainly is not entrenched in the Illuminati stuff and the cabal like she is. And that's all that matters. I mean, that's the most important thing, is that Bush Clinton dynasty is done. And you know, that was a huge event on the timeline to see, okay, we can take a breath. Cause you know, up until then it was like, you know, dealing with, you know, Hillary Clinton. Oh my goodness. And she
said that, in her campaign, she said, well, I'm going to bomb Syria. Well, guess what? Syria has a mutual defense treaty with Russia. That means that Russia would get involved, and there we would have it. The Third World War would just explode out of that. So I'm sure, oh gosh, we dodged a bullet on that one. Yeah. Then again, if we think about different futures and different timelines, there may be timelines where she actually did win the elections, and they are having their problems now. Because we have parallel universes where things are not exactly as ours is.
Right. And that's why our belief systems and the things we attach ourselves to do, or excuse me, the things we attach ourselves to are going to determine the timeline we're on. I mean, there's all sorts of possibilities. And, you know, when we look at our creative energies and, you know, the multi-dimensions and the different, you know, possibilities out there, you know, we keep leaving old layers of ourselves behind, and we keep collapsing timelines just based on our own beliefs and thought forms, but it doesn't mean that those old timelines don't exist for others.
Yeah, I know. And we are getting towards the end of the show here. Could you talk maybe a little bit about more where they can get a hold of you, send you messages and possibly information? If you are listening to this show and you are one of those people that is thinking about becoming a whistleblower, you need to get in touch with Laura.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I do consultations over the phone to help people answer some questions about the work that I do. You can also get a session with me. I do soul-centered astrology and just sort of help you to understand the patternings that you're dealing with, to help you to really be sovereign and empowered and be on the timeline that you want, or create the future you want, to really help harness your powers, your everything, and let go of what doesn't serve you. And you can find me at lauraeisenhower.com. My website's been down, so you can just email me. I'm still trying to get it back up at laurabe4@gmail.com. And yeah, come to see, you know, these events. It's great to just meet people in person and to sort of build, you know, community. And I keep my social media pretty updated without my website being available, and that's Laura Eisenhower on Facebook.
Okay, that sounds wonderful. Yeah, I think we're gonna let's end the show about 3 minutes early so the producers have a little bit of time to go up for the next show. So I thank you very much, Laura. This was so informative and so good. I loved it. Thank you very much for being on with us.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed it, and have a great rest of your day.
And also, you people out there, go and listen to her at the what did you call it in the desert?
Contact in the Desert, and then there's New Living Expo in San Mateo, California.
Yes.
One's in June. Contact in the Desert's in June in California, and then New Living Expos in San Mateo, California.
Okay,
and I'll keep posting about it to keep people updated.
Yeah, catch up with you. I tried to send you a friend request on Facebook, and I think you were full. You couldn't take any more.
Well, I'll try and add you. I'll
okay. Thank you. So we will be back next week, and until then, take care of your others. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye.
Oh, are we still on?